On our 7th anniversary, my wife celebrated with her 23-year-old lover over dinner. She told me earlier that day she needed to work late because of a scheduled board meeting. I responded, "That's fine." The next day, she went crazy because I dropped the bomb. "Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Arnold Lewis from Seneca. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I woke up that morning with the weight of 7 years pressing against my ribs. 7 years of marriage to Claire, a milestone that should have felt like a victory, but instead sat like a stone in my gut. The air in our suburban kitchen smelled of burnt toast. She'd left the bread in too long again, distracted by her phone, no doubt. I stood by the counter, arranging a modest bouquet of lilies I'd picked up the day before. White petals, soft and unassuming, the kind of thing she used to love before she stopped noticing. It was our anniversary, and I told myself it still mattered. Claire breezed in, her heels clicking against the tile, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun that screamed efficiency. She barely glanced at me. "Morning," she muttered, scrolling through her phone, her thumbs dancing over the screen. I caught a glimpse of a message, too quick to read, but enough to make my jaw tighten. She'd been like this for months, distant, clipped, her eyes always somewhere else. I set the lilies on the table, their faint scent lost in the haze of her perfume. "Happy anniversary," I said, keeping my voice steady, testing the waters. She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten. "Oh, right. Thanks." A pause, then a forced smile. "Busy day at the office. You know how it is." She grabbed her bag and turned for the door. "Don't wait up. Might be late." I nodded, my hands curling around the edge of the counter. "Work keeping you busy?" "Always," she said, already halfway out. "See you later, Ethan." The door clicked shut, and the silence swallowed me. I stood there, staring at the lilies, their petals drooping slightly under the weight of neglect. She hadn't even touched them. I could have called after her, demanded answers, but I didn't. I learned long ago that silence was my sharpest weapon. Let her think I was the same old Ethan, quiet, predictable, the consultant husband she'd pegged me for. She had no idea who I really was. I drove to my other office that morning, the one she didn't know about. Not the little cubicle I pretended to work from, but the real one, a hidden room tucked behind a nondescript warehouse on the edge of town. The walls were lined with monitors, a fortress of screens I'd built over years. I owned her company, every brick and paycheck, but I'd kept it buried under layers of proxies and aliases. A secret I'd guarded since the day we met, back when I thought love meant trust. Now it was my ace, my shield, my blade. I settled into the leather chair, the hum of the servers a low growl in the background. My fingers moved over the keyboard, pulling up the security feeds from her office, live streams I'd installed myself. There she was, at her desk, laughing with that kid, Jake. 23, all muscle and smug grins, a personal trainer she'd hired for team wellness sessions. Her hand brushed his arm, lingering too long. My pulse didn't spike, it sank, slow and cold, like water freezing over. I watched them for an hour, the way she leaned in, the way he smirked. Every frame carved itself into me, a gallery of betrayal I'd suspected but never seen so clear. I could have stormed in, made a scene, but that wasn't me. I'd built an empire by staying 3 steps ahead, by letting others dig their own graves. Claire was digging hers, and I'd hand her the shovel. The day dragged on, and I worked. Real work, the kind that kept my company's profits soaring while Claire played manager in her little corner. By evening, I was back home, the lilies still untouched on the table. My phone buzzed. Her text, short and sharp, "Board meeting tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the words, the lie so blatant it almost made me laugh. A board meeting? At a company I owned? I knew the schedule. There was nothing planned. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. "That's fine." I texted back, my fingers steady as stone. I set the phone down and leaned back in the chair, the house creaking around me. The clock ticked past 7, then 8. I didn't call, didn't pace. I waited, letting the quiet coil around me like a snake. She thought I was clueless, a shadow in her life she could step over. But shadows move, and they see everything. I pulled my laptop closer and logged into the tracking software I'd installed months ago. Nothing invasive, just a precaution I'd never needed until now. Her phone's GPS blinked to life, a red dot glowing at La Belle Vie, a swanky restaurant downtown. No board meetings there, just candlelight and overpriced wine. I switched to the private investigator's feed, my guy, discreet and loyal, parked across the street. The photos streamed in. Claire in a red dress, Jake in a tight shirt, their heads bent close over a shared dessert. I closed the laptop, my breath even, my mind clear. 7 years ended in a snapshot, and I felt nothing. No rage, no tears, just a switch flipping, a plan clicking into place. I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked to the garage. The lilies stayed behind, wilting in the dark. She'd made her choice, and now I'd make mine. I stood, my shadow stretching across the hardwood, and made a choice. Not to confront her, not yet. That would come later, when the ground was mine to command. For now, I'd move. Shift the board before she even knew we were playing. I grabbed a duffel from the closet, the one I'd kept packed for emergencies she'd never questioned. Clothes, laptop, a few files, nothing sentimental. The wedding photo on the dresser stared at me, her smile frozen from a decade ago. I left it there, untouched. The drive to the mansion took 30 minutes, the city blurring past in streaks of neon and shadow. I'd bought the place a month back, a steel and glass fortress perched on a hill overlooking the sprawl. Cash deal, off the books, another secret she'd never sniffed out. The gates swung open with a hum, and I pulled into the garage, the engine's growl fading into the night. Inside, the air was crisp, untouched by her presence. Marble floors, high ceilings, a wall of windows framing the skyline. It wasn't a home yet, just a shell, but it was mine. I dropped the duffel in the master suite, a room bigger than our old living space combined. The bed was bare, no sheets yet, but I didn't care. I walked to the window, the city glittering below like a chessboard I'd mastered. Claire thought she was winning, spinning her web with Jake, but she didn't see the pieces I'd already moved. The company she worked for, my company, was a machine I'd built from nothing, a labyrinth of power she'd never navigated past her little manager's desk. She didn't know the codes, the accounts, the strings I held. I pulled out my phone and texted my private investigator. Keep eyes on her. Updates hourly. He'd been with me for years, a shadow of my own, and he knew better than to ask questions. The reply came fast, on it. I set the phone down and opened my laptop again, this time to a different system. Bank accounts, joint ones she thought were ours together. I didn't touch them yet, that'd come soon. For now, I checked the mansion's security feeds, making sure the gates, the cameras, the locks were live. No loose ends. She'd never find me here, not until I wanted her to. The clock hit 11, and the private investigator's next update pinged. Still at restaurant. Moved to bar. Hensy. I pictured it, her fingers on his sleeve, his breath on her neck, and felt a flicker, not of pain but of clarity. This wasn't love unraveling. It was a contract breaking, one she'd signed in secret with someone else. I'd given her 7 years, a house, a life she'd taken for granted, and she'd traded it for a kid who'd ditch her the second the bills piled up. I walked downstairs, the echo of my steps sharp in the empty space. The kitchen gleamed, stainless steel and granite, a blank slate. I poured a glass of water from the sink, nothing stronger. I needed my head clear. Standing there, I traced the plan in my mind. Cut her off, expose her, leave her with nothing but the wreckage she'd built. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was justice, cold and precise, the kind I'd honed running a company she didn't even know was mine. I finished the water and set the glass down, the clink loud in the silence. Outside, the city pulsed, oblivious to the shift in my world. I climbed the stairs back to the bedroom, the duffel still unzipped on the floor. I didn't unpack, didn't settle. This wasn't about comfort, it was about control. I stood at the window again, hands in my pockets, the skyline a map of what I'd earned and what she'd lost. Claire was out there, laughing with Jake, thinking she'd won. She didn't know I'd already left, that the game had changed. She'd find out soon enough. I woke up in the mansion before dawn, the bare mattress creaking under me as I sat up. The city lights still flickered through the window, a restless pulse that matched the one in my chest. I'd slept in my clothes, the duffel untouched beside me, but rest wasn't the point. I'd crossed a line the night before, and now it was time to draw the next one. Claire was out there, tangled in her lie, and I was ready to pull the threads apart. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, the machine's hiss filling the empty space. My phone sat on the counter, silent since the private investigator's last update. Claire and Jake stumbling out of La Bellevue past midnight, her arm looped through his. I didn't need more photos. Her betrayal was etched in me now, a map I'd follow to her undoing. I sipped the coffee, black and bitter, and opened my laptop. The joint accounts glowed on the screen, a shared life I'd funded while she played her game. With a few clicks, I locked her out, access revoked, cards frozen. She'd feel it soon. The clock ticked toward 8, and I drove to the warehouse, my hidden office a bunker of control. The monitors hummed as I logged in, pulling up the real-time feed from our old house. Claire's car wasn't in the driveway yet. She'd stayed out, probably at Jake's, thinking I'd be waiting like always. I smirked, a rare crack in my calm, and dialed my realtor. Put the house on the market, I said, voice flat. Today. Cash offers only. She didn't ask why, just confirmed the listing and hung up. Another thread snapped. By 10, the private investigator texted, she's heading home. I leaned back, watching the feed as her sedan rolled up. She stepped out, hair mussed, lipstick faded, the red dress swapped for yoga pants and a hoodie. She fumbled with her keys, oblivious to the storm I'd unleashed. The door swung open, and she froze, her head tilting as she took in the silence. I'd left nothing but the furniture, the lilies wilting on the table like a ghost of yesterday. She dropped her bag, her mouth moving in words I couldn't hear, and then she grabbed her phone. My cell rang seconds later, her name flashing. I let it buzz once, twice, then answered. Ethan, where the hell are you? She shouted, her voice shrill, cracking at the edges. You can't just disappear. What's wrong with you? I stayed quiet for a beat, letting her squirm. Then I said, check your messages. I hung up and sent the photos. Claire and Jake at the restaurant, spoon to spoon, her smile a dagger. The caption was simple, enjoy your new life. The feed showed her staring at her phone, her face draining of color. She sank onto the couch, hands trembling, and I felt the first real spark of satisfaction. She called again, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I watched as she dialed her credit card company, her voice rising in panic. What do you mean declined? Try it again. She paced, tugging at her hair, the hoodie slipping off one shoulder. The realtor arrived then, a brisk woman in a blazer, knocking sharp and loud. Claire answered, bewildered, and I turned up the audio. The house is for sale, the realtor said, handing her a flyer. Owner's orders. You've got till tomorrow to clear out. Claire's jaw dropped, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. This is my house. He can't, she stopped, the pieces clicking, but not enough to see me yet. She stormed outside, yelling at the realtor as the for sale sign stabbed into the lawn. I leaned closer to the screen, my coffee cooling in my hand. She'd built her castle on sand, and I was the tide. Her next call was to Jake. I tapped his number weeks ago, just in case. Baby, I need you, she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. Ethan's lost it. He's selling the house. My cards aren't working. His reply was muffled, but I caught the tone. Bored, dismissive. Figure it out, Claire. I've got a client. The line went dead, and she stared at the phone, her shoulders slumping. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just watched as her world crumbled, brick by brick. By noon, she was back inside, packing a suitcase with frantic hands. She grabbed clothes, jewelry, anything she could carry, but the panic in her eyes said it all. She had nowhere to go. The private investigator texted, she's crying in the car. Keeps calling you. I didn't answer. Let her drown in it. I'd given her 7 years of stability, a life she'd spat on, and now she'd taste the cost. I closed the laptop and stood, stretching the stiffness from my neck. The warehouse was quiet, the monitors dark, but the plan was alive, humming in my veins. She'd lost the house, the money, the lover who'd never cared. Tomorrow, I'd take the last piece, her job, her pride, and she'd see the shadow I'd cast all along. I grabbed my keys and headed for the mansion, the city blurring past. Claire thought she'd played me, but the game was mine, and I was just getting started. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting the knot of my tie charcoal silk, sharp as a blade. The mansion's master suite gleamed around me, its stark lines a far cry from the cluttered suburban cage I'd left behind. I'd slept better than I expected, the bare mattress a throne compared to the bed I'd shared with Claire. Today wasn't about rest, though, it was about execution. She'd lost the house, the money, the illusion of Jake. Now I'd take her last foothold, and she'd see me for the first time. I drove to the company in my black sedan, the engine purring like a predator on the hunt. The building loomed ahead, a sleek tower of glass and steel I designed from the ground up, every floor a testament to the empire I'd hidden. Claire worked on the ninth, a mid-level manager in a corner office she thought she'd earned. She had no idea I'd signed her paychecks, that I'd watched her strut through my halls for years, blind to the strings I pulled. Mia met me in the lobby, her heels clicking with purpose. My secretary, 5 years at my side, dark hair pinned back, eyes like a hawk's. She carried a tablet and a cardboard box, her lips pressed into a line that wasn't quite a smile. "Everything's set," she said, handing me the day's schedule. "She's in a meeting with the sales team." Unaware. "Good," I replied, my voice low, steady. Mia didn't flinch at the edge in it. She never did. She'd seen me build this place, knew the weight of my secrets. I trusted her with them, and today she'd stand witness to the unmasking. We took the elevator to the 9th floor, the hum of the ascent a quiet drumroll. The doors slid open, and I stepped out, Mia at my flank. The office buzzed, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the hum of a machine I'd oiled with my own hands. Heads turned as I passed, a ripple of curiosity from staff who'd never seen me here. I wasn't the consultant Claire painted me as. I was the shadow they'd felt but never named. The meeting room was at the end of the hall, glass walls framing a dozen suits around a table. Claire stood at the head, mid-sentence, a whiteboard marker in her hand. She wore a navy blazer, her hair still mussed from yesterday's chaos, but her chin was high, clinging to control. She didn't see me until I pushed the door open, the hinges silent as a whisper. "Ethan?" Her voice cracked, the marker slipping in her grip. The room went still, eyes darting between us. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer, not yet. I walked to the center, my steps deliberate, the air thickening with every one. Mia set the box on the table, its thud a gavel strike. Claire's gaze flicked to it, then back to me, confusion hardening into something sharper. "This is my office," she snapped. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, cutting her off. My voice was calm, a blade wrapped in velvet. "Because it's mine." She blinked, her mouth parting, but no sound came. I turned to the room, meeting every pair of eyes, sales reps, assistants, her little kingdom. For those who don't know me, I'm Ethan Voss. I own this company. Every desk, every deal, every dime. I've owned it since before most of you were hired. A murmur rippled through them, shock tightening their faces. I let it settle, then looked at Claire. "Including you." Her hands gripped the table, knuckles white. "That's impossible," she stammered. "I'd know if you didn't," I said, stepping closer. "You never asked, never looked past the story I fed you." The consultant husband, the quiet fool. "But I built this, Claire, while you played your games." She shook her head, a desperate laugh bubbling up. "You're lying. This is some sick stunt. Ask Mia," I said, nodding to my secretary. Mia tapped her tablet, projecting a document on the wall, my name, clear as day, on the founding papers. Dated 10 years back, before Claire ever walked these halls. The room gasped, a collective breath sucked out. Claire's face strained, her blazer suddenly too big for her shrinking frame. "You're done here," I said, my words final, unyielding. "Pack your things. You're fired." She stared at me, eyes wild, then lunged for an excuse. "You can't do this. I've got rights. I'll sue." "You won't," I said, my gaze locking hers. "You've got nothing left to fight with." I nodded to Mia, who slid the box toward her. 5 minutes. Security's waiting. The room erupted. Whispers, chairs shifting. But Claire just stood there, frozen, the marker rolling off the table with a clatter. I turned and walked out, Mia behind me, her steps a quiet echo. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I'd seen her collapse in that moment, her pride shattering like glass under my heel. In the elevator, Mia broke the silence. She didn't see it coming, she said, a note of awe in her voice. "No," I replied, watching the numbers drop. She never did. The doors opened to the lobby, and I stepped into the light, the weight of her fall lifting off me. The house was gone, the money cut, the job stripped. Claire was a ghost now, haunting a life I'd already left. I'd shown her the shadow, and tomorrow I'd let her beg at its edge. For now, I drove back to the mansion, the city shrinking in my rearview, my empire intact, my hands clean. I watched the sun climb over the city from the mansion's terrace, a mug of coffee steaming in my hand. The air was cool, sharp with the promise of fall, and the skyline glittered below like a prize I'd claimed. Yesterday's showdown at the company lingered in me, not as triumph, not yet, but as a door slamming shut. Claire's face, pale and crumbling in that meeting room, replayed in my mind. She'd seen me, finally, but it was too late. Today, I'd let her feel the full weight of her ruin. I'd spent the morning tying up loose ends. The house sale was in motion, offers already trickling in, cash heavy and eager. The private investigators' updates had slowed. Claire's car spotted at a cheap motel off the highway, her movements erratic. Jake was gone, predictably, his phone off the grid since she'd called him in tears. I'd known he'd bolt. He was a leech, not a lifeline. She was alone now, stripped bare, and I felt no pity, only a cold certainty that she'd earned it. By noon, I was in the study, a room I'd started to furnish, bookshelves lining the walls, a desk of dark oak. My laptop hummed as I reviewed company reports, the numbers steady despite the ninth floor's whispers. Mia had texted earlier, staff's buzzing. No one's sad she's gone. I'd smiled at that, a rare curve of my lips. Mia's efficiency, her quiet loyalty, had carried me through yesterday's storm. She'd earned more than a paycheck. She'd earned my trust. The security system chimed mid-afternoon, a sharp ping that snapped me from my work. I pulled up the feed, Claire's sedan idling at the gates, her figure slumped behind the wheel. She'd found me, tracked the mansion somehow, though I hadn't hidden it hard. Let her come, I'd thought. Let her see what she'd lost. I watched as she climbed out, her hoodie stained, hair a tangled mess. She pressed the intercom, her voice crackling through the speaker. Ethan, please. I know you're in there. I didn't answer. I leaned back, the mug cooling in my grip, and let her stew. She pressed again, her tone fraying. I just want to talk. Please, I'm begging you. Begging. There it was, the word I'd waited for, raw and ragged. I switched to the exterior camera, her face filling the screen, eyes red, cheeks hollow, a shadow of the woman who'd laughed with Jake. She pounded the gate, a weak thud against steel, and I felt nothing but the echo of her choices. The doorbell rang downstairs, Mia, right on time. I'd asked her to come by, to go over some contracts, but her timing was perfect. I buzzed her in, the gates parting for her sleek coupe. Claire flinched as Mia drove past, her head whipping between us. I met Mia at the door, her coat draped over one arm, a stack of papers in the other. She's out there, she said, glancing back. Looks rough. Let her stay. I replied, leading her inside. She'll tire herself out. We settled in the kitchen, the island between us, papers spread like a battlefield. Mia's voice was crisp, cutting through the numbers, sales projections, staff updates. But her presence softened the edges of the room, her dark eyes catching mine now and then. She'd been there from the start, a steady hand when I'd built the company in secret, a confidant when Claire's distance grew. I'd never noticed how her laugh, rare but real, eased the knots in me until now. Claire's voice broke through again, louder, desperate. Ethan, I'll do anything. I'm sorry, just let me in. I stood, crossing to the window. She was at the gate, hands gripping the bars, her hoodie slipping to reveal a thin frame. The private investigator had said she hadn't eaten much, hadn't slept. I opened the security app on my phone and muted the intercom, her pleas fading to silence. Mia watched me, her pen pausing. You're not going out there, she said, more statement than question. No, I said, turning back. She made her bed. Let her lie in it. Mia nodded, a flicker of approval in her gaze. We finished the contracts, her hand brushing mine as she handed me a pen. A small thing, but it lingered. When she stood to leave, I stopped her. Stay for coffee, I said, surprising myself. She hesitated, then smiled, a real one, warm against the mansion's cold lines. Sure, she said, settling back. Outside, Claire's figure slumped against the gate, her sobs a faint hum I could ignore. I poured 2 mugs, the steam curling between us, and Mia took hers with a quiet thanks. We talked, not about work, but about the city, the future, the little things I buried under Claire's shadow. Her laugh came again, soft and unguarded, and I felt something shift, a door opening where one had closed. I glanced at the feed one last time. Claire was still there, head bowed, defeated. I shut it off, the screen going black. She'd beg until her voice gave out, but I was done listening. Mia's presence filled the space Claire had left, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I woke to the sound of rain tapping the mansion's windows, a soft rhythm that washed away the echoes of Claire's pleas. The night before, she'd lingered at the gates until exhaustion took her, her silhouette fading into the dark as Mia and I sat over coffee. I hadn't checked the security feed since, didn't need to. She was gone, a ghost I'd exorcised, and the silence she left was mine to fill. Today, I closed the book on her for good and stepped into something new. I dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, the mirror reflecting a man I hadn't seen in years, unburdened, eyes clear. The company waited, its pulse steady under my hand, but I'd decided its fate. I'd built it from shadows, a fortress to prove I could, but it wasn't my future anymore. I wanted something cleaner, something real. Mia had stayed late last night, her laughter still ringing in the kitchen, and I knew she'd be part of it. She arrived mid-morning, her coupe pulling through the gates as the rain eased. I met her at the door, her umbrella dripping onto the marble. "Final papers," she said, holding up a leather binder. "The sale's locked, 10 million, clean break." I'd sold the company to a competitor, a deal I'd brokered in secret over weeks. It was done, the last tie to Claire's world severed. Mia's efficiency had made it seamless, her signature on every dotted line a mark of trust I'd come to rely on. We spread the documents across the dining table, a slab of walnut that dwarfed the room. She walked me through the details, funds transferred, staff retained, my name erased from the records. "You're free," she said, her voice light, almost teasing. I looked at her then, really looked, her dark hair loose for once, framing a face that held no judgment, only understanding. She'd seen me dismantle Claire's life without blinking, and still she stayed. "Free's a start," I said, leaning back. "What's next?" She tilted her head, a spark in her eyes. "Whatever you want, Ethan. You've got the cash, the time. Build something new, or don't. Just don't disappear on me." Her smile was small, but it hit me like sunlight through the clouds. I hadn't planned this, her, us, but it was there, growing in the space Claire had vacated. "Let's get out of here," I said, standing. "Lunch, somewhere loud. No more quiet." She laughed, a sound I wanted to hear again, and grabbed her coat. We took my sedan, the city unfolding around us as the rain streaked the windshield. I drove to a bistro downtown, a place with clattering plates and voices thick with life. We sat by the window, steam rising from our plates, hers pasta, mine steak, and talked over the noise. Not about the past, not about Claire, but about the present, her love of jazz, my knack for fixing old cars, the kind of things we'd never had time for. Her hand brushed mine across the table, deliberate this time, and I didn't pull back. "You're different today," she said, her fork pausing. "Lighter." "I am," I replied, meeting her gaze. "You stuck around. That matters." She didn't blush, didn't look away, just nodded, like she'd known all along. We finished the meal, the rain slowing to a drizzle outside, and I paid the bill with a card tied to my new life, one Claire would never touch. We drove north after, no destination, just the road. The city gave way to hills, green and rolling, the air fresh through the cracked window. Mia turned on the radio, a saxophone wailing low, and I felt the last knot in me unravel. She hummed along, her voice soft, and I glanced at her partner, ally, something more. 7 years with Claire had been a cage. This was freedom, and I wouldn't let it slip. I didn't see Claire until we looped back toward the mansion, hours later. Her sedan was parked crooked on the shoulder, 100 yards from the gates. She stood beside it, soaked and shivering, her hoodie plastered to her frame. I slowed, Mia tensing beside me. "She's still here," she murmured. "Let her be," I said, my voice firm. Claire's head lifted as we passed, her eyes locking on mine, hollow, pleading, a wreck of the woman I'd married. She stumbled forward, arms outstretched, her mouth moving in words the wind swallowed. I didn't stop. The gates opened for us, closing her out, and I parked without a backward glance. Inside, Mia shed her coat, her presence steadying me. "She won't last long out there," she said, practical, not cruel. I nodded, crossing to the window. Claire was a speck now, swaying in the rain, her car a lifeline she couldn't afford to fuel. She begged until she broke, but I'd moved on past her lies, her games, her shadow. I turned to Mia, her silhouette framed by the fading light. "Stay tonight," I said, no hesitation. She stepped closer, her hand finding mine, and the rain faded to a whisper. Claire was gone, a memory I'd buried, and the future stood right here, real, warm, mine. We walked upstairs together, the mansion alive with possibility, and I knew I'd never look back. And that's where Ethan's story ends. Or maybe where it truly begins. Did he find the peace he deserved, or is there more to come? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Claire get a shot at redemption, or is Ethan's new dawn with Mia the perfect close? If you love this tale of betrayal and triumph, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this with someone who'd root for Ethan's revenge, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay sharp, and see you in our next story.